Hello everyone, this is Cool Cat. I'm one of the developers for Strip Poker Night at the Inventory, and I'm also the one who runs this channel. I'm sure you're all well aware of the many iceberg videos out there, and believe it or not, SPNATI's got an iceberg image of its own. There's quite a bit of history to this game and all the strange events that have occurred in its development, so people figured it was about time to document it all, though there will likely be just as many interesting events in the future. Now, I've only been around since 2020, and while I'm familiar with many of the things on here, there's a lot I'm unfamiliar with too. So I've gotten the help of several others in the community Discord in writing this script and voicing the video. Just like the game itself, this video is very much a community effort, and I want to thank everyone involved. So with all that, here we go. A full explanation of the SPNATI Iceberg. SPNATI. This is the acronym for Trading Card Night at the Inventory, a side game on the Discord server where people can get cards based on the in-game characters with points they get for participating in the server, and can even trade with other people for more cards. It's pretty much the closest thing SPNATI will ever get to a minigame. Interestingly, SPNATI points are also frequently used to bargain with people for help with making models. This is known as the bounty system. SPNATI Podcast. You've probably already noticed if you frequent the subreddit, but SPNATI has its own podcast, hosted by the game's developers. They usually talk about the continuing development of the game and discuss their opinions on new characters there. There's a link to one of the episodes in the description. Testing tables. I think nearly everyone knows about this already, but the testing tables are a separate in-game roster of newer characters to the game. This is essentially something like the test servers in games like Dota 2 or Hunt Showdown, where it's meant for players who want to test and give feedback on newer parts of the game in a part that's separate from what's already been thoroughly tested and balanced. Best thing about it is that anyone can do it, including you. And hey, it's a good way to get in the developers' good graces too. ACO. Every so often, there will be a general thread about SPNATI that appears on the adult cartoons portion of 4chan. It's not nearly as big or active as the SPNATI subreddit, but it's still there for anyone who might not know about the game and wants to check it out. Full Moon Table. One of the more comedic preset tables, which are tables that have characters already picked out and usually follow a certain theme, Full Moon is a table consisting of the opponents being 4 copies of Moon from Pokemon. Usually you can't pick copies of characters unless you do some code sorcery, but we found the idea too funny to not do just this once. Offline version. SPNATI.net isn't the only version of the game. There's also SPNATI.party, aka the offline version. This is the version with every single character in the roster, including the ones who were previously removed due to quality reasons or being seasonal only. So if you don't particularly care about quality and really wanted to play against characters like Tifa from Final Fantasy VII or the Sex Toilet from Better Call Saul, then here you go! Hold space to break limits. A fundamental, if often unnoticed, trick involving Kisake, which is the art program developers use to make the character models, is that you can increase and decrease sliders past their boundaries by holding space. This is especially important for making larger male characters like Jim Raynor from StarCraft and Twisted Fate from League of Legends. Swimsuit Edition. This was a mirror of SPNATI created back in the early days that uses alternate versions of characters where they're all wearing swimsuits. You can still play it to this day, though given the low character quality, it's debatable whether you'd actually want to. Default Blush. This refers to the oval-shaped blush stickers present on default models of older versions of Kisake. Leaving them on the model is considered a common beginner's error. Forbidden Waifus. This is a term used to refer to characters that have been frequently requested, but never made. Some of the most frequent examples include 2B from Nier Automata and Yoko Littner from Gurren Lagann. Yuri from Doki Doki Literature Club used to be among these as well, before developer Cavendish finally made her.
Boiling a pizza. One of the developers, specifically me, lost a bet relating to Hanako's art being completed and had to film myself boiling and eating a pizza as a result. I made it very clear that it was not exactly a fun experience or meal. This later influenced another bet later down the line where Nmask lost a similar bet and had to eat one too. Cool Cat also lost a bet during the development of Colt from Brawl Stars, but took his in a bit of a different direction, and by that we mean eating a ghost pepper. You can watch the horrifying and hilarious results in the link in the description. Nmask clones. This is just a joke referring to the amount of people on the podcast who sound exactly like Nmask, just the typical young adult white guy voice. Examples include Wibbly Warble and 2010 Mantis. Pinkamena. This is an Easter egg where, if Pinkie Pie from Equestria Girls loses 3 rounds in a row, or if she's played with Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club, then she'll become Pinkamena, the antagonist of the notorious horror/gore fanfiction Cupcakes. You gotta hand it to her developer for making a whole new set of poses just for a small joke like that. Etherpad. Back in the pre-character editor days, characters used to be written by multiple people, sometimes as many as half a dozen, on a site called Etherpad, which let multiple people edit a single text file. It was regularly used as an example of too many cooks, and characters made this way were very predictably, confusedly written. Goes to show that more isn't always better. Royal Flush RNG change. Once, for the April Fool's Day events, one of the developers known as Faraway Vision decided to dramatically up the odds of the player receiving a Royal Flush. You can imagine how many players were shocked at first, which made the realization even better when more and more of them started posting on the subreddit about it.
GitHub to GitLab to Get Good. SPNATI was originally hosted on GitHub, but was forced to move to GitLab owing to the former's policy on pornographic content. A couple of years later, we were forced to move again, for unknown but probably similar-ish reasons, to Get Good, which also coincidentally massively increased our available hosting space. This was a boon because file capacity used to be much more limited, and the only way to make room for new characters was by snapping weaker ones. Since the move, though, we haven't had to do that for a very long time. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Girl stuck in a locker. This is a reference to the locker room background. It's pretty much exactly what it says on the tin, a girl stuck in a locker. We don't know who she is or why she's in there, but she's stuck in there all the same. I guess it's just SPNATI's version of those trapped, tormented souls in the wall of those levels of doom. April Fool's characters. For the April Fool's seasonal event, some developers will make joke characters for the game. Characters intended to be self-parodying spoofs that are too ridiculous to ever be actual characters in SPNATI. Examples include stuff like Megamix from Crash Bandicoot, Sho Tucker from Full Metal Alchemist, and AE86 from Initial D. Yes, the actual car. There are a few recent examples of characters made this way that were so well liked that their developers decided to turn them, or are working on turning them, into legitimate additions to the roster, such as Wikipedia, the mascot for Wikipedia, and Constans from Little Witch Academia. Yuri's Curse. It was once rumored that Yuri from DDLC was cursed, having gone unmade long after the rest of her franchise mates had already been made, and with at least 3 dev teams having attempted her and ended up dropping her. The joke reached its peak with the addition of Amy, a fan character based around DDLC, who was advertised by her developer, Napsu, as, quote, the 4th Doki before she was revealed. Adding on to the curse joke is the idea that due to the meta nature of the original DDLC, Amy's technically not even supposed to exist, and each game with her has a rare chance to hint that she might actually be a spider demon in disguise, who's somehow forgotten her true nature. Cool Cat, the writer of the script, is struggling not to make a joke about the Dark Tower that no one but him and a couple others will get. Yeah, no, what the fuck is the Dark Tower? Dangledorf. This was an alt account on Discord used by another developer, Wibbly Warble, who is known for making characters such as Megaman. He used it to pull a prank where he posed as a newbie and asked for Emmy from Katawa Shoujo to be taken offline so he could make his own version of her. He then posted his model of Emmy, which was actually the first attempt that her developer, Corky the Cactus, made. This is definitely one of the more fondly remembered troll attempts here. Farto. No, this isn't about a dev trying to force their weird kink into the game, though this is unfortunately something we'll have to get to later. Farto is actually an acronym meant to give new developers advice on how to decide which characters they want to create. Once you understand Farto, you'll understand your place within the development team. But what does Farto mean? It's actually carefully organized code. Watch closely. Feasible, attractive, rules, tone, occupy a niche. Preferences aside, it's a good way of laying out what's a good idea and what's a bad idea when considering who to make. Can you make them in Kisake? Do people actually want to fuck them? Are they humanoid, adult, and fictional? Can you accurately write how they speak? Are they unique in some way? Understanding these ideas is important if someone wants to become the next new developer for SPNATI. Is it you, maybe?
Big Zimbabwe Theory. A community feedback questionnaire answer from a while back stated that Xander, a character from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, looks like Leonard from the Big Bang Theory. Big Zimbabwe Theory. It's become something of a running joke whenever he's brought up because, let's face it, he's not really anyone's reason to play SPNATI at this point. Bob King. This was just a Discord account of someone who'd frequently joined the SPNATI server with multiple throwaways without actually saying anything. The same goes for Hiroshima Hero and Ikik. That said, Bob King's a bit more notable for inspiring an April Fool's joke where everyone on the Discord changed their name to Bob King, with an identical icon to match too. Extreme Exhibitionist Comic. This was a comic about Moon getting kicked out of the inventory due to her extreme horniness, and subsequently getting a job working in adult movies by Metaton from Undertale. The most notable thing about this is that it was lost media for a while, having been deleted. More recently, though, it's been brought back by somebody who saved it. Leafy broke the game. Leafy was, or is, a character from Battle for Dream Island, a show about a total drama/Survivor-esque game to win an island. From what we know, this show's actually not terrible, but the SPNATI character, who was based on a leaf, by the way, was not only bad, she somehow broke some crucial code and made the game unplayable for a day or so. We've had a number of bad characters submitted before, but no others so bad that they literally broke the game. Embla Academy. This was supposedly the in-progress graphic novel that the now offline character Anji was supposed to be from. As far as we can tell, there hasn't been any progress made on it in years. Where Player Kyo! This point is practically the epitome of how weird people on the internet can get, and especially the weirdos that porn games can attract. A while back, someone came onto the subreddit screaming in all caps, asking about how we could play with Kyo from Clannad, who for a while only had a cameo appearance in Nagis's epilogue. Not only did he refuse to believe she wasn't actually in the game, but he spammed developer Patisdom with voice messages loudly asking, "Where Player KYOU?" Eventually, the moderators had to ban him from the Discord, subreddit, and Twitter when he wouldn't let up with the spam. Developer Hex eventually looked more into him and learned that he's actually someone who's been infamous on the internet for quite a long time, having openly partaken in very creepy activity both on the internet and in real life, being openly racist and sexist, and as a militant libertarian who doesn't think COVID-19 exists. Kyo finally has come to the game's roster, and thankfully without any pressure from other weirdos like this guy. Cog says fuck. Developer Pivotal Cog has apparently only said fuck once in his entire time being part of the SPNATI community, on March 31st, 2019. Despite this minor slip-up, I'm sure his mom is super proud of him.
SPNATI.farawayvision.io. This was another offline version separate from .party, which was hosted by the developer Viz, as opposed to .party, which is hosted by someone we don't know about. In addition to being a more frequently updated version than .party, it also hosts most of the infrastructure required to support SPNATI development, including the Discord bot, the APIs for collecting user reports and player statistics, the Kisake importer and disassembler, the crowdsourcing system, the TCNATI bot, and a few other miscellaneous things. Confederate Gwen. So, yeah, we're aware of how awkward this sounds. Basically, the developer of Spider-Gwen, the MASP, had learned English when he lived in Louisiana, and at one point gave her a line where she said she'd win it for the stars and bars, due to him thinking that it referred to the US flag and not the Confederate flag specifically. As you can imagine, this was quickly changed upon him realizing what it actually meant. Hopefully this didn't turn away any potential fans while it was up. Writing.com. In the days of old, SPNATI first started as a choose-your-own-adventure fanfic on this website by creator Undead Clown, which was a collaboration that Joseph Cantel, the creator of SPNATI, took part in too. Hard to believe, but this massive game with a long line of developers all started with a humble little fanfic. Philo. Philo was the creator and first administrator of the community Discord server. He hasn't been present for years now, but we all hope he's doing well. White Sheep Dog. Another important figure, this is the guy who made offline script-compatible versions of Kisake in the pre-character editor, pre-Viz era. Jin's 30 Minutes on Live Roster. This was an incident where one of the developers, Patisdum, accidentally put Jin on the main roster for 30 minutes before taking him off. What was actually supposed to happen was Jura arriving on the main roster, as she had just passed sponsorship at the time and was considered good enough for main. Jin had not, though, and had ended up in the main roster despite not going through the usual checks and balances needed at the time. Lieutenant Uhura. By far one of the most infamous characters cut from the game, Lieutenant Uhura, based on the Star Trek character, was not only poorly made, but considered extremely tasteless, doing stuff like speaking in stereotypical jive despite never doing so in the show, and saying that she'd had sex with nearly every crew member on the Enterprise. Doesn't take a genius to figure out why she was removed from the game.
You sent your Kisake codes to the mods. In the days before the character editor, you had to run these complicated Python scripts to generate pose images, which was notoriously frustrating and finicky, so a lot of people just sent lists of pose codes to Arndris, and he took it upon himself to generate the images for them. Everyone is still grateful for this man and his efforts to this day. Valerie. This was an old attempted project of Hex, specifically a proposed character for the game who was a Pokemon Hex maniac named Valerie. Unfortunately, he never made much progress on her, and it's something people like to joke about. Until they remember that he's one of the biggest contributors to keeping the tags in check. Lara and Sam. Lara Croft, SPNATI's very first character, was originally intended as a 2-in-1 deal with another character named Sam from the Tomb Raider reboot, and they were a 2-in-1 character in the original fanfic. Given how the game was still taking its first steps back in the day, you can probably guess why this didn't pan out. Broken mirrors. Numerous people used to make copies, aka mirrors, of SPNATI. Often, they ended up buggy for reasons we're not entirely sure of, though it's commonly believed it's either due to not receiving updates, or due to us moving repositories on GitHub. Saki's happy ending. Saki Yoshida, the one from Emergence, not the Saki from Zombieland Saga, was originally created as a means to give her an actual happy ending that wasn't just solved through JoJo Ex Machina. She used to have an epilogue where this happened, but it was removed following a model update that rendered it outdated. We're just as sad about it being gone as you are, believe me. Megumin's empty folder. This happened when the MASP was entertaining the idea of making Megumin from Konosuba before Wibbly got around to making her, and once accidentally merged an empty folder called Megumin into the game. For whatever reason, he couldn't be bothered to delete it, so it stayed there until Wibbly made Megumin for real and filled it. Never let anyone tell you that programming a game is a totally smooth operation.
Jake Cat's Eye. Well, this is an uncomfortable one. Jake Cat's Eye was a guy who came into the Discord server once asking for us to make his YouTuber persona for him. Not only that, but he offered to send reference photos of his genitalia, but only to female developers. No, we are not making this up. Pretty much everyone gave him a collective lol no and booted his ass out. Good riddance, I say. Male Korin/Rinka epilogue. Korin Male and Rinka used to have a joint forfeit and shared epilogue. They were both removed as a result of Rinka getting an art update and the two developers having a falling out. Ruby Shrekification. This refers to an incident in where a bunch of DeviantArt users got a hold of a bunch of SPNATI Iceberg codes from the character folders. You can probably guess what kind of horror ensued from this. Bootleg Brigitte. An underage newcomer once submitted an incredibly low-effort attempt at Brigitte from Overwatch. The most bizarre thing about her was that she somehow had more poses than lines. Wise Lookalike. If you unlock the epilogue of Revy from Black Lagoon, you might notice that the mugger that she shoots looks suspiciously like the infamous and now offline character Bai, because he used to actually be Bai. However, the mods made developer SPANATI remove Bai from the epilogue because it was considered poor taste. Les and Trans. These are the only spoken up friends and teammates of Bai. Yeah, apparently there's a whole set of lore behind him that his creator thought of. It's not good, to the point where even his creator pretty much forgets everything about him. Moon is a cosplayer. Apparently, Drenky Krang, the original creator of Moon from Pokemon, said that she was actually a cosplayer and was not the real Moon. This was in reference to how she's been written as an ultra-horny lecher with barely any bearing on how she is in her source material, a common point of contention among both developers and the fanbase.
Hinata 100. Back when there were still less than 100 characters on the roster, a new developer submitted Hinata Hyuga from Naruto to testing and immediately went for sponsorship. Unfortunately, given how poorly made and obviously rushed she was, X even made an infamously huge comment highlighting all of her flaws. It was obvious that she was little more than his attempt to be the guy who made Character 100. It didn't work, and Maya from Vandred became Character 100 instead. Pochi's other games. Pochi, the creator of Kisekai, has actually made some other Flash porn games. The most notorious of these involves Azusa from K-On! Shitting onto a plate. Videl is 753. A while back, a righteous moral crusader once tried slandering SPNATI by calling it a pedo game. In an attempt to support this cause, they went on a wiki dive of all of the characters' canon ages. Yes, all of them. This was obvious because they listed Videl's age as 753, when actually her date of birth is age 753 in the Dragon Ball timeline. As much as we hate and despise Lolicon and similar stuff, please don't do this. Politics safe for work. This was an April Fool's joke made by Joe, which was supposedly a channel in the Discord server for discussing politics. The only message was from him saying, "Lol, could you imagine?" Mehmet was a user from Turkey who claimed that us, at the time, not having Yuri in the game was a, and I quote, declaration of war on Urians. When told she was being made, despite cheerfully admitting he'd never even played SPNATI and wouldn't until Yuri was in the game, he said he didn't trust us to do it and said he'd do it himself. He got a lot of disdain due to his shitty attitude, leading to people trolling him by saying that Hanako made Yuri obsolete and that we'd make her a futa. It wasn't long before he got himself banned, and then, in petty rage, tried spreading slander that we were a pedo game. When called out on his behavior, he also got a really weird self-flagellating attitude and kept harassing us to forgive him. Also, as an aside, he actually believed the Futa Yuri thing and used it in his propaganda against us. SPNATI 3. This was a joke version of SPNATI made for April Fools by developer Andrew. Unfortunately, we don't think any versions of this exist anymore. 2chan thread. Someone once found a thread about SPNATI on 2chan, which is the Japanese equivalent to and inspiration for 4chan. Just a cool little detail showing that despite being in English, this game's actually known in multiple parts of the world. Zone knows SPNATI. Given that Zone's mascot, Zoneton, is in the game, it was only a matter of time before he started learning about SPNATI himself. He occasionally references us on his Twitter account, which is pretty cool. Elsa v1.0. The Elsa in the game files isn't the first version that was submitted. This version was also submitted and rejected by the mods. The model for her was so bad that people joked about how it must have been from a bootleg Chinese flash game called Elsa's Reactor No. 4 Safety Test. Sonic Smasher. This entry is honestly not that remarkable. It was just the most obviously underage dude we've ever had on the server. In case it's not already obvious, people under the age of 18 are not allowed in the SPNATI community. Shiani John. Shiani John was a pretty unstable user from Greece who had a massive vendetta against Turks. He was most infamous for his extremely incoherent spam and broken English, and posting announcement messages for new creators on the subreddit before their creators could do it, insisting he was the, quote, SPNATI newsboy. When he was finally banned, he spammed the subreddit with gore images on several alt accounts, now insisting he was the SPNATI creepypasta. And now, he's just a footnote on the SPNATI Iceberg. 1v1 games. This is, strangely enough, one of our most requested features. Technically, it is possible if you pick your desired opponent along with Natsuki from Doki Doki Literature Club and name yourself Daddy, which will cause her to leave the game in disgust. You can't do this with Yuri or Penny Valentina though. Riva. The one character to be permanently removed from the game, Revo is originally from Legend of Dark Witch, the same source as Zizu and Sola. She was removed back when creators were allowed to request that, along with Sola and Navi, but they eventually got reworks and were re-added to the game. Leafy's other models. Another fun fact about Leafy, she went through several different model iterations during her stint on testing, none of which got any feedback before merging, all of which were horrible, and all of which are still visible in her folder. There's a reason she's such an infamous mess among developers.
SPNATI Elderly Edition. Some weirdo on the Reddit known as Jackpot Crazy Man had a he had a king for old people, and he decided to express it publicly by making elderly versions of Jasmine, Cora, Mercy, and Ruby. Each of them, some reason, had massively inflated breasts and hips, just the way I like them. You can probably guess that it went swimmingly. Most notably, it led to SPNANANAN, quote, "Come on, man, we're trying to masturbate here," which has become shorthand for whenever someone with an obviously unappealing idea for SPNATI needs to be rejected.
Taylor Swift and Alexander Hamilton. So, believe it or not, this refers to two rather subpar models of Taylor Swift and Alexander Hamilton that were made years ago by a newbie, back before the no real people rule was added. thankfully, they never made it into the game in any form. Lily and Rose. These are the two Angel Girl mascots visible on the subreddit. They really have no presence in the game itself, so how they connect to the inventory is up to you. 2 Jasmines. SPNATI's first real controversy was caused by a guy who wanted to make an edgy original character called Jasmine for the game. He refused to change her name and had a meltdown when he was advised that he should change her name to prevent conflict or confusion with Aladdin Jasmine, who was already in the game. Eventually, he never made anything and just left. Sock was a sock puppet. It's believed by some of the developers that Sock, the developer of Callie Belladonna from Ruby, was actually Cyan writer BB, the original developer of the original 4 Team Ruby girls, Neo, and Pura, on an alt account to try and avoid his negative standing in the community. Evidence for this includes them sharing an Imager account, the sock puppet link, and the same errors relating to targeted dialogue being present in both Callie and BB's characters. They also vanished at the same time after Callie failed sponsorship. Namasp is Dranky. It's an old community joke that Dranky Krang, the creator of Moon, OG Kara, Gay Spaghetti Chef, OG Metaton, and Captain Falcon, is the evil split personality of Namasp. They do say that good and evil are reflections of each other, after all.
Cheats list. This just refers to a different console command people have tried figuring out so they can win the game easily. Kind of a lame one. Etika knew about SPNATI. This refers to the YouTuber Etika himself having liked a tweet made to him by Andrew, a developer of SPNATI, which encouraged him to try out SPNATI himself. Unfortunately, he never got the chance to, and may he rest in peace. Floortile-chan, an OC made by Yuri Space Pirate who never made it to testing. She was really just a reference to a past 4chan thread about a guy who had an actual fetish for floor tiles. Bet he really enjoyed that one moment with Hanako in Katawa Shoujo. Cum bucket metaphor. An old analogy made by Arndress back in the day to address the trend of tons of model posts and character requests on the subreddit, but no one willing to do any writing for them. The analogy goes as follows. Imagine that the only way to create a character was to fill a bucket full of cum. Filling a bucket full of cum would be an exhausting job. Sure, you could have a lot of fun doing it, but it would still be hard work. It would not be something that you could slam out in a single afternoon. You'd need breaks to let your creative juices recharge. As long as you didn't have to see it, you'd probably appreciate it if other people helped you fill the bucket too. In the end, at the accumulation of many small contributions, you could finish the job and the character of your choice could be in the game. In this metaphor, you arrived 6 months ago and you've seen the need. You know what needs to be done to create a character. So you volunteered to supply the empty buckets and then later, even more empty buckets.
Click to flip the models. This is just a commonly requested feature, being able to click to flip the models in-game at any time to see their butt poses. It's minor, but probably will never be implemented. All of the characters are actors. This is a fun little fan theory about the game, that the reason why all these characters from different properties are together is because they're all just actors being played by enthusiastic cosplayers. This idea is even toyed around with in the fanfic Cosplayer's Paradise by Dorian. Yondev approved Ayano. Andrew, an older developer who wanted to make Ayano from Yandere Simulator for SPNATI, actually contacted Cum Chalice Man himself, Yandere Dev, asking for permission to make her. And the two legitimately corresponded over it, with him offering some questionable advice on her characterization. It's a shame she still hasn't made it into the full game yet, but I suppose it's kind of fitting for anything Yandere Dev is involved with.
Agent Alaska. Agent Alaska was one of, if not the first people to be banned from the Discord server for dropping slurs. Not much needs to be said there. Purple Phantom. This refers to a dude who came out of the Discord server, posting cryptic nonsense and starring an ARG that appeared to refer to something happening in April of that year, but was never delivered on. Nowadays, he's little more than another running joke, though he does reappear very occasionally, usually just with a good message. We still don't know who he truly is. GSC wasn't a joke. We're not sure exactly what this is referring to, but it could be referring to Gay Spaghetti Chef from Conjun House having been submitted as a legitimate character, and not as an April Fool's joke, since April Fool's characters weren't a thing in 2017. Gay Spagger was absolutely intended as a non-serious character, though. Joseph Cantel makes every character. This is just a shitpost referring to the guy who originally created SPNATI, Joseph Cantel.
Fake Mod Chat was the real Mod Chat. This was an April Fool's joke back in 2019, where the moderators of the Discord spent a couple months making a fake Mod Chat channel that would accidentally be leaked to the rest of the server. Some people then started joking that this was actually the real Mod Chat, and the whole joke was a cover-up to the fact that they did indeed screw up. Commissioning characters. A lot of people in the server have argued whether or not it would be plausible to pay a developer real money to make a character for Strip Poker Night at the Inventory. However, at the time of this video, at least, nobody dared to try to do so. Even then, due to the prodigious amount of effort making any character takes, it wouldn't be a very cheap commission to begin with. Targets to characters that don't exist. It was semi-common practice in the early golden age of SPNATI to write targets to in-progress characters. This notably backfired when Chiaki from Danganronpa 2 had targets to Maki Harukawa, who was at the time an in-progress character that never made it to testing. Not to be confused with Maki Nishikino from Love Live, who was unfortunately a part of the confusion. Charla. Charla was a now-forgotten character from back in the older days of SPNATI. She was so forgettable and low effort that Andres literally forgot to make her a card in Trading Card Night at the Inventory. To this day, she still doesn't have a card, and it's very likely she never will. There is no dev team. Due to the nature of many indie games and how basic the mechanics of SPNATI are, it's sometimes assumed, especially by new players, that SPNATI is entirely made by one person. Whether it's Joseph Cantel or some other fellow they made up in their heads. Who knows? Maybe we really are fake. Or maybe you are.
Lowly Edition. Something proposed by users on the 4chan thread several times. The idea is essentially a fork or clone of SPNATI, which is open source, that allows underage and underage appearing characters. It's possibly based on a part in the original fanfic that mentions a table consisting exclusively of younger characters. Though quite frequently requested in the game's early days, no attempts ever came to fruition, or were even begun. Other community discords. Discord servers that have split off from the main ones. They're often made by community members who have either been banned or are in poor social standing, often following various controversies on the main social server, often spoken of only in private. It is unknown how many currently exist, or in what capacity, or who is in them. 3D models. Occasionally, people wonder about the plausibility of using Koikatsu, or similar programs, to make 3D models for the characters in SPNATI as opposed to 2D ones. However, due to the established art style of the game, and many characters not even being updated anymore, this simply wouldn't be practical. Devs withhold completed characters. One of the random fictitious accusations that occasional trolls on the 4chan SPNATI thread like to throw out, along with stuff like, sponsorship means paying the mods. And finally, Anili Nista of Theos. The most recent addition to the Iceberg, and by far one of the most unpleasant. An original character who was apparently a new developer's attempt at contributing that took over a year to make, done entirely without anyone knowing about it, when she was submitted to and rejected by the moderators. She instantly became infamous for a multitude of reasons, including being explicitly underage, having a model that was clearly cobbled together from compressed JPEGs, making multiple references to rape in her dialogue and indicating that she was being forced to be there, and pissing herself in her forfeit stage. A quote, "Do not watch this, girls. Do not watch it. There is shame. I cannot stop peeing. I cannot stop. Come on, girls, stop looking at me like that." Annealy was the last straw that resulted in the rule prohibiting OCs from being a developer's first character, and is now mostly referred to as just the Piss OC, as a cursed example of everything not to do in developing for SPNATI.
And so that was the SPNATI Iceberg. I hope this clears up a lot of the rumors, mysteries, and crazy parts of the game's history. Once again, I have to give a big thanks to everyone who contributed to this video, and we all thank you for watching as well.
Okay, Antonio, your word is pee. That's a homophone. Can you use it in a sentence, please? Yes, of course. This pea is delicious. Okay, P-E-A. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong answer. But you... What?